Welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 98, where we're going to talk about full code, digitally signing a PDF. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support for PlantAnApp. And today, this is a very interesting topic from one of our senior developers. And so we hope that you enjoy it. Before we get into that, we'll talk about some other things. So the Low Code Cafe is just something that we do every Wednesday. This hour, 10 Central Time, it's mostly a technical event. We update you on what's going on with our product. We'll talk about some things that happen on the support channel. And then the biggest piece is reserved for doing some hands-on low coding. If you have something that you think would be of interest to the PlantAnApp community and you would like to present, please reach out to us. We've had several very good guest presenters over the years. All these episodes are recorded on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/PlantAnApp. You can access it through that QR code, or you can also find it in the links that we're going to post here in a few minutes. Our agenda today, we'll talk briefly about our product roadmap updates and some stories from the trenches of support. And then Razvan will provide our biggest piece of the production today. So digging in, roadmap updates, we are currently in beta testing phase for our release 1.21. That's scheduled to go on through July 3rd, which is, I guess, Sunday. And the release is scheduled for July 6th, barring any unforeseen circumstances. This particular release has lots going on in it, but the two major stories that are external that you will see in the product is the ability to export and import entities, which solves a part of the problem of deploying in multiple environments. And we also, I've been mentioning in weeks past, we've enhanced the hotfixes experience, but it's also the updates experience. As we move forward, the entire updates section of the product has been converted into low code, which is part of one of the themes that we're taking on overall to the degree that it makes sense. We're converting our product into we're eating our own dog food. We're developing based on the features that we have, rather than coding and saving full coding for the more difficult segments of what needs to happen. And that just makes us move more nimbly, and that's what we hope to enable you to do too as you use our product. A few things from the trenches this week. In version 1.20, and I've explained before, we've had a very busy hotfix schedule. We release these week by week, and so far there have been 42. In version 1.20, we made some significant changes from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 5, and that ends up, there were a lot of things a lot of small things that have needed to be fixed, and we've done those. We add 2 more to the list this week. I know at least one person on the webinar today will be happy to know that we have fixed in our listing builder the ability to save the row per page value when you're using the card view. So previously, regardless of how you tried to set this card view, it would always set back to 4 cards per row. And that's very inconvenient for either large or small screen like mobile devices. So the setting now saves properly, and you can get the impact that you're trying for with the listing view. There's another enhancement in listings where, and it's a small enhancement. When you used a computed and formula field, it still offered you the ability to search, sort, and filter on that field. And since those options weren't available on those field types, we've hidden those. They no longer offer to let you do that because it won't do it. And yeah, Mark, absolutely. I'm glad that you're happy about the card view fix. Okay. I wanted to touch on a recent support issue that we had, and this is in our form builder. There is the ability to save information to a report, and what this is it allows you to save information to a one common table, the ABT action form reports table. And so if you turn it, by default, it's turned off. You're just collecting information. You're going to process it immediately in that form. But if you turn it on, it starts saving the data, which is great. But we saw a support case this week where a client had large volumes of data. It was actually a form that was on the public part of a website. And then there was tens of thousands of records in the table. And because this is all stored as it's a little bit unstructured. It's stored in JSON. There aren't true columns for the data because we have one table that supports the data from all the action forms. And so you can get into an issue where when you have large volumes of data, you can have performance issues. And the recommendation is if you're going to have large volumes of data, it's better to use a data table or a PlantAnApp entity to store your information and stay away from this safe report feature. But I'm going to take a minute and just kind of show this feature, and then you can kind of get a sense of it. So I have a page here with nothing on it. I'm going to add our action form product, our form builder, to the page. And so we will manage this, and I'm just going to create a simple contact form. So the idea behind this form is it's preloaded to have first name, last name, email. First thing I'm going to do is call it our demo contact form. I like to name things. That's a good best practice. For this purpose, the default of this form sends out a couple of emails. We're not going to send any emails, so I'm going to delete those actions out. We're just going to display a message that says that we've received their message because we're going to save the data to a report. The settings allow you to save the data to a report. You see it here in Enable Reports. So if you click that on, it gives you the ability to check that for all fields. So automatically all fields will save it to the report. And so I've turned it on and turned it on for all fields. So this will give us the ability to demonstrate that the form works. We'll save this and take a look at it. And so now we have our form. We can fill it in and send. So I'll do that. We just fill in the simple form, hit send now, we get the message that the information is received. So this information is, we didn't have to develop any table. It's all automatically saved to the one that I mentioned, the reports table. And we can demonstrate that it actually did save by adding a listing to show this. So we're going to go in and drop in a, .NET does what it wants to do sometimes. So, all right, there it is. We're dropping in that one. Now we'll drop in, our listing product is called Action Grid. That's its internal name. So we'll drop it here on the form above our, on the page above our form, and we'll manage it. We're going to do this from scratch and choose as the data source action form. On the module that it's going to be tied to, there's a lot of action forms on my test system, but the one that I just added is at the bottom of the list. It's the demo contact form, which is another good reason why you name things. You can easily find it. Otherwise, it would have just, you'd have to find it by number. It's kind of difficult. I'm not going to choose any other settings. I'm just going to save that. It gives me the chance to rename this, and so I'm going to do that. This is the contact listing. It's coming from the demo contact form. I'm going to add fields, and I'm going to just add all of them. So you say select all, and then add these selected fields. They're all in the listing. So we save and go back and take a look at what we have. So now we have a contact listing, and we have our data from our test entry in the form. And as each one is added, you'd get more rows. So we send it, and the next time the page is refreshed, the listing will now have these 2 rows. So the cool thing about using saved reports, if you have very low volume kind of information, a little contact form, send me some information, or I'm interested in your product or something like that, it's very useful. You don't have to define a table, and you just let it be stored in our default table. But just realize that all the data is intermingled from every form, is all intermingled on the same reports table. And so what that can mean is that if you had hundreds of these on your, or dozens of these, many of these on your website, and a high volume of data, now you've got all your data kind of mixed together in one table. It's hard to process. If you have a use where you're collecting data, that's not the recommended procedure. The recommendation again is that if you want large volumes of data, or if you want to add some structure to it, create your own table or use PlantAnApp entities. And again, performance issues, because all that data is intermingled, and if there's large volumes, it can be very hard to find the ones that you want, or a listing, for example, might stop performing, and that's the issue that we ran into in support. Okay, moving on then. I would like to encourage you to join us in Campfire. This is the low-code Campfire happens Friday, this same hour, 10 a.m. Central Time. We get together, and it's more of a conversation instead of a presentation. And we see lots of questions answered and solutions offered by the community. We hope that you'll join us for that. And the link for that is going to be coming up. I'm going to do that right now. We'll grab these links. So you can register in advance for Campfire. You can get to our recordings. And you can access our community portal. We'll have lots of great people that join us on our community portal that will answer your questions, as well as from our support team. And you can give us feedback on this event. Great. So I'm going to invite Razvan to unmute and turn on his video. Razvan is a senior developer with us, and he's going to talk about a project he's been recently involved with that allows digitally signing a PDF using a USB device. This is a custom project that we did for one of our customers, I would say probably are doing for one of our customers, but the techniques that he's going to talk about are going to be, I think, very interesting to full coders that want to use our product, whether you do this exact solution or something else. It's an interesting technique. So with that, Razvan, hello.
Hello. So I guess let me share my screen.
Please do.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Razvan. As Dale mentioned, I am pretty much a new joiner with PlantAnApp. The first time I'm doing this kind of presentations, and I have some limited knowledge on cryptography and limited knowledge on the PlantAnApp type of applications. And also, as Dale mentioned, PDF autosigner was not yet thoroughly tested. So, you know, we still have to work up on a couple of issues here and there.
Razvan?
So,
yeah, before you go on, I don't think you got shared all the way yet. So if you
okay, let me try it again.
Yeah, and then I'll confirm that it's there.
Can you see it now?
Perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, my mistake.
No, great.
Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, bear that in mind as I go through the presentation. One thing. So the content for today, we'll just jump through a couple of things before we go into the actual demo. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the motivation behind this project. I'm going to talk about a short intro on digital signatures. We're going to talk about HSM devices, our approach, types of communications, so how you can communicate with these devices. And then we'll jump into the actual presentation and an actual demo for it. So the first thing is motivation for this project. Why have you started doing this project? So the regular flow of signing a document, probably most of the people here are already aware of it. So generally you need to download a PDF, you open it in an application, something like Acrobat Reader, you have to choose the signature, you draw the rectangle, then you sign it, you save it, and you upload it. So there are a bunch of steps that you have to go through. And if you have to, to sign a lot of documents, then it can become quite painful. So the idea is that we're trying to simplify the signing of PDF documents and integrate this with PlantAnApp applications. Yeah. So digital signatures are a particular implementation, I guess you could call it, of asymmetric encryption. Yeah, I've put in here some links. I'm not gonna go into a lot of details about this stuff. As I've mentioned, I have limited knowledge, and also I'm not really sure. It's a large topic. Yeah, so I don't think it makes sense to go into too many details. Yeah, the one that is important for us mainly is the third link in here, and I'm going to show that one. So link on Wikipedia. Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is a particular usage of the asymmetric cryptography. So there is symmetric cryptography and there is asymmetric cryptography. And asymmetric cryptography uses public and private key, just so that you know. Yeah. So generally what happens is there will be an algorithm, a cryptographic algorithm that will be used to generate pairs of two keys. Yeah, and one of them will be a public key and another one would be a private key. Yeah, so the way this works generally, so let's say that we have a public document. Yeah, so everyone can read that, everyone can see it, and we just want to make sure that someone has signed off that document. Yeah, and everyone else can check that that person has actually signed that document. Yeah, I will go into a little bit of more details later on, but just so that you can, get an understanding of what's going on now. So let's say that Alice wants to sign a document, yeah, and then Bob and potentially a lot of other people, maybe Dale, maybe Bogdan or whatever, yeah, other people want to verify that this document was signed by Alice. And the way it works is that Alice has a private key, so only she is in the possession of this private key, and all the other people have the public key. Yeah, and what is going to happen is there is this document that contains inside something simple like hello Bob, and she can use the private key to sign it. What's going to happen is there is this information that is being added to the document, yeah, and then that document goes out into the world, and everyone can use this public key to verify that this document was actually signed by Alice. Yeah, so in short, that's the idea. If I go back in here and I make it full screen again. So in here, there are a bit of more details. If anyone wants to read more about this part, you can probably get a little bit of a simplified explanation of this stuff. And what it is important to know is that, as I mentioned before, there is a private and a public key. Yeah. So no one should be able to get the private key from the public key, yeah, because otherwise everyone that has the public key that can validate a document can actually go in and pretend that they're Alice. Yeah, they can sign their own documents and they can say, hey, this was actually signed by Alice. Yeah, so it's not possible to get the private key from the public key. And the digital signatures I mentioned partly earlier on, sorry, they provide authenticity protection, integrity protection, and non-repudiation, but not confidentiality protection. So what does this mean? It means that the document is authentic. Yeah, it means that no one has tampered with it. So once Alice has signed the document, if anyone signs it, if you use the public key, and you'll be able to figure out that someone has played around with that document and is no longer valid. Yeah, non-repudiation is tied into this one. So once it was signed, Alice cannot go and say, hey, I didn't sign this document. Yeah, and she cannot do that because only she has the private key. Yeah, so this is important, but it doesn't ensure confidentiality protection. This means that the document is essentially public. Yeah, so everyone can read it. Yeah. So in order to sign these documents, you need to use something like an RSA algorithm. As I mentioned, there are cryptographic algorithms that generate this public-private key, and there are different types of algorithms, and some of them are suited for certain operations, and only some of them are suited for digital signatures. So you need to use something like an RSA algorithm. I say you need. Actually, what happens is the manufacturer of the devices will provide this RSA, this algorithm. Yeah, so 99% of the cases or something like that, it will be an RSA algorithm. There are some other types of algorithms, but just so you know, if anyone mentions them, this RSA algorithm is essentially what is being used to generate this key pair that's being used to sign digitally a document. Yeah. So I mentioned also in here, just as an information, what is encrypted or what is signed is actually the hash of the document. So essentially what happens is on the full document, they apply a function, you get a reduced number of bytes of information, and that is what is actually signed and appended to the document. It's just for a technical aspect, just so that you don't double the size of the document by signing the full document essentially. But this is just so you know, this is kind of like what happens. Yeah, and this is something that we are actually setting up. So the RSA algorithm is coming from the provider, and we are using, this is something that we've set up. This is the hash function that you're using. This is SHA 256. You can read more information about this one. SHA-2 is actually the family. There are many hash functions used in there. One of them is SHA 256. Yeah. So this is what we're setting up, just in case that you want to look through the code and you're wondering, okay, what are they doing? So this is a very strong hash function. All this stuff, RSA and SHA type of hash functions, are being used actually by think about all kind of organizations in US and around the world that deal with secret information, CIA and all that stuff. Yeah, so this is all the security kind of like organizations, they're using this type of algorithms. So they're very strong algorithms. They cannot be easily cracked. I mean, if you're going to have like a huge amount of power, it's still going to take you hundreds or maybe thousands of years to crack this. Yeah, so they're quite strong. So HSM devices, what are these? These are the shortcut comes from hardware security module. Essentially, most of the time, it's just going to be an USB stick. Is going to have in there usually the private and the public key pair, and some libraries from the manufacturer of the USB stick, and maybe some sort of applications from them. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the encryption algorithm is established by the HSM manufacturer. There are a multitude of HSM manufacturers. So there'll be many manufacturers of this kind of USB sticks. Yeah, and each manufacturer will provide its own approach, library, application, etc. Yeah, and each one will support different flavors of operating systems. So usually these will be obviously Windows, Mac, and Unix, but it depends. Yeah, so it's not always going to work in the same way. It's not always there. It's not always going to happen the same thing. Yeah, the private key, the one that's being used to sign the document, always stays on the HSM device. Yeah, so they'll always be staying on that USB stick that you're gonna get. No one else can get access to it. The document actually, or the hash of the document actually gets sent to the. So as I mentioned, the private key stays on the USB token, yeah, on the USB stick. No one else can get access to it. The signing happens on the device. Yeah, so we need a way to communicate with the USB stick from a PlantAnApp application, and there are a number of ways to do that. There is an experimental web USB API. There are some security concerns about that one, and still experimental. You could create browser extensions. There are compatibility and maintenance issues when you go down that route. So our approach was essentially to build a local .NET Core web application that runs on a fixed port, runs as a Windows schedule task or a Mac OS daemon. So it stays in the background and it keeps on running once the user has started its laptop, let's say. Yeah. And the PlantAnApp application, so the one that gets downloaded into the browser, contains some JavaScript code that will run locally in the browser and will make calls to this locally installed application. Yeah, and we don't need to export the port, so everything is secure. Yeah, so this one solves the security concerns and any compatibility issues I mentioned. There is an asterisk there in the compatibility issues. There can be still some issues here and there, mainly due to the fact that, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of different manufacturers, different ways of accessing the USB tokens, different implementations, so you can still have some surprises here and there. Yeah. Okay. So there are, when it comes to actually communicating to the USB stick, yeah, there are two main types of communications. Yeah, and we are trying to support both ways, just to maximize the possibility of signing the documents automatically. Yeah. So one of them is the PKCS 11, and another one is CryptoAPI, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. Depending on a number of factors, the client might have access to both one of them or none, as I mentioned. This is due to how the manufacturers have created and packaged the information in there, what kind of settings the client has on their local laptop. So there are a number of factors, and that is why we are giving both types of communicating with HSM devices. Yeah, we recommend that the application still offer the user to be able to manually download the PDF and sign it locally. Yeah, just in case for some weird reason they don't have access to any way of signing this document automatically. So PKCS 11 is, I'll just go shortly through these ones. It's an open standard API to deal with cryptographic tokens. You can find out more information on this link that I've put in here. In theory, all the device manufacturers should implement this standard. In practice, there are some differences. They have forgotten to implement something. Maybe it doesn't work the same way on different operating systems, etc. Yeah. So this one needs a library to be installed on a user's operating system, and we need the path to the library so that we can communicate with the device. So this is the native library that comes on the USB stick that the manufacturer provides. On top of this is unmanaged library. So this is native library. On top of that, we are using PKCS 11 interop library to communicate with this library, with these native libraries. Yeah, and we are going to try to have a quick look through a configuration file, and it's going to become a little bit more clearer later on what I am talking about. Yeah, here, just if there are any kind of like misunderstandings or whatever. For the Microsoft Crypto API, this is a different approach. It's not an open standard, it's just something that Microsoft essentially has made up, is integrated in the .NET framework, although the classes have changed between versions. Some of them work only on some platforms, relies on registering the public certificates in a certificate store. So this is not easily supported by all operating systems. I mean, the user needs to activate certain things. So it may be that this is not going to work. And a lot of some manufacturers recommend not using this approach. Yeah. So as I've said, we're giving both approaches. So now we're going to go into the presentations of and demo of the local web app. So as I mentioned before, there are essentially two parts that work together. One of them is a local .NET Core web application that the client has to manually, they have to download it somehow, they have to install it locally on their laptop because it needs to communicate with the USB. Yeah, and then there is the PlantAnApp application that gets opened by the client via browser, and that one communicates with the local API that they have installed. Yeah, so we're going to first present the local application, a little bit about it, and then we're going to talk about how you can build the PlantAnApp application to communicate with the local API that was installed. So a couple of things. We are using a library from iText. Yeah, this is just so that we can sign the PDF. We can we can open it. We can read it. It simplifies a couple of things. You can actually see our code. There are 2 links in here. Currently, the code is in the first one. It will be moved shortly in the second link. Okay, so that being said, let me share my Visual Studio. So in short, in there are 2 important projects. Maybe one of them is a lib project. Yeah, this one, which just contains the vast majority of the functionality, and the local API is actually the web application that uses the library. The important part in here, I guess, is the token settings. So this is a config file, and this is what I've mentioned earlier on. Yeah, so there are 2 ways of signing. One of them is via the PKCS 11. The other one is via Microsoft's approach. Yeah. Now, in the PKCS 11 devices, in here, we need to know the path to the native library that's being installed on the user's laptop or whatever device they have, like desktop, whatever they're going to have. I guess most people will have laptops nowadays. Yeah. So we need to. These usually are hard coded. So when you go and you take on like one of these sticks, this is the actual stick. Yeah, that one of the, I don't know if people can see it. Yeah, that was contains these keys. Once the first time it gets plugged in, it will run some installation stuff, and it's, from what we've seen so far, pretty much you don't have the option to install it in a specific folder. So they're always going to pick some sort of folder, and they're going to stick the libraries in there. So in theory, once we fill in this type of this JSON configuration file with all the possible manufacturers and their libraries, then people can just use this one and they don't have to worry about it. Yeah, but just so that that it's in here. And there, as you can see, there are different libraries for different flavors. So Windows x64 will have like on 64 bits will have like a one path, one library. For 32, we'll have another one. There is the Mac OS and so forth. Yeah. So what happens is we read this file, we look at the current operating system, we look at its architecture, and we load the corresponding library, and we communicate with the library to get to sign via the PKCS 11. And for the certificate is we need to somehow figure out which certificate we should use. In this case, we're just using the issuer name, and we check for the issuer name that are being installed for the local user. We take all the certificates that have a private key, and we check that the issuer name actually contains this one. Yeah. So now, usually the client will download an installer. So in our case, for example, on Windows, I've already run the MSI installer. And what's going to happen in the case of Windows, as I mentioned, it is going to install a scheduled task. In our case, is this one. As you see, it installs it. It starts at logon. So when the user logs on, it automatically starts this one, and it runs in the background on a given port. And we know that port, and we can communicate with it. And if we can communicate, we can see that via Postman. Yeah, I just have like 3 calls in here. As I mentioned, you can make a get call, yeah, and it will give you the available signatures, right? So if we make this one, you can see that there are 2 signatures in here, yeah. So you can sign in both ways in our case, yeah. One of them would be with the PKCS 11, and the other one is the one that Microsoft recommends via the CryptoAPI.
So a question, just to make sure I understand, the Postman that you've got there is talking to your local host on the designated port. So your application is responding back basically, you have the ability to talk to this local application.
Yep.
Using Postman, or eventually the browser is going to talk to this local app.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So there is an application that you can see in here runs on a local host. This is the name. Yeah, this is the local machine actually, and the browser is going to make the call in here. And as I mentioned, this application actually runs as a scheduled task. So the user can run the MSI installer, and on Windows is going to start it as a scheduled task. When the user logs in, the application starts automatically in the background, and it's listening to requests. Yeah.
Perfect.
And you can see in this one, and if you want to, let's say, sign with PKCS 11, yeah, let me just create a short demo in here. So this is the folder I have in here, a very dummy PDF, a very simple PDF. It just has a hello world, nothing else in there, as you can see it. And if I go and let me just attach this file again, just so that you can see it in here. Yeah, so this is already on my instance. It's on documents in here. You'll be able to see it later on. I'll also demo the PlantAnApp application. So if I open this one, yeah, and I try to sign, you can see in here the signature name. This is the one that I mentioned comes from the PKCS 11. Yeah. So if I sign using this one, now it went to my actual hardware device, the USB stick, and it signed the document, and you can see the response in here. And if I say save to a file in here, and let's say that I call it as hello signed PDF in here, just so that you can see signed, and let's say this was via PKCS 11. And if I open it up again, you'll see in here that this is the document. Yeah, you'll see in here that it says sign and all signature is valid. So it validates the signature, and here is the signature. So currently we are signing on the first page on a given page, in a given location. We'll probably add a way to be able to specify exactly where you want to place the signature. At the moment, it's just in there. So you can see it in here. The document was signed successfully via the PKCS 11. And you can do a similar thing with a certificate. I'm not really sure that it makes sense to actually go through it now. And we just use the other signature name, and you sign it via the other way. So maybe you're wondering, okay, why do I have these two options? As I mentioned, because in some cases you might only be able to see the PKCS 11. Yeah, so maybe the user hasn't agreed to registering linking the certificate in its certificate store, or maybe he didn't know how to do it or whatever. Yeah, it didn't happen automatically. Or it can be the other way around. For some reason, the provider of the HSM device isn't following the PKCS 11 standard properly, and we cannot see and we cannot use the signature. Yeah, so it just gives more flexibility. Yeah. So now I guess we can go into actually seeing a sample application that we've built for this one. So this is an application for it, and you can see in here what happens is it says you're about to sign a file. I mean, ignore this one. This was just put in for the moment. You can see in here this the signatures. Yeah. If I remove the stick, let's assume that I just entered this in here. Yeah. And if I remove the stick, there is no signature available. Yeah. Because you cannot see it. Yeah. So if I plug it in, let's say, now let's just reload this one, you'll be able to see the signature. So if let's pick the second one, and I'm going to enter the pin number. So each stick, when you get this USB stick, you're also going to get a pin number that you have to plug in when you want to sign something. Yeah. So if I plug in and sign this one, so what's going to happen, we'll see later on, it actually goes into this documents folder on my portal, on my local PlantAnApp. Yeah. and it will load this hello PDF. We'll see the settings later on. And if I say sign, hopefully everything says fine. So file was signed, and I need to press next to actually move on. Yeah, and it says file uploaded successfully. Yeah, and if I go in here, you'll see this one. This was the file that was generated. We'll see the settings for the naming. And again, I open it up, and as you can like expected, you will see the signature in here. You'll see the signature is valid. Yeah. So let's go a bit and look a little bit into the actual application, and we go and edit the form. So I'm not going to go into actually all the fields in here. I will mention the important ones that you need to use in order to be able to digitally sign, how you want to exactly use them, and what kind of messages you're going to show and how you're going to link to the actual document and so forth. It's up to you. Yeah, but I'll just go through the important ones. So first things first. So this is an auto signer signature dropdown. This is a control that was created for this project. It's based on the dropdown control. As you've seen it, it was actually a dropdown listing the signatures. It's a special one. It just communicates with the local application the same way that Postman talk to it. Yeah, on this via this API sign. Now, so this is the control that you need to put in here, and there will be the password, which has the PIN, and it will have a single file upload control. This is the one that's actually being used to actually upload the file after it was signed. You will see that this one is actually hidden. Yeah. So this is just so that we're able to actually upload the file after it was signed. We don't need to show it to the user. If you want to have like a different flow, it's up to you how you want to build it. So what is important is, as I mentioned, you have the auto signer signature dropdown, the custom control. You'll need a password. Obviously, you'll need the upload field, and you have in the sign button. We also created. Robert actually has created a special action called sign PDF that you need to attach to the on-click handler. And in here is actually where most of the hard work is happening. So you need to select the signature field. This is the drop-down so that we know what signature actually user wants to use to actually sign the document. Bear in mind that it may be the case that the user might have multiple signatures available and he wants to sign with a particular one or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, you need to select from where it will get the signatures, like what's his name. This is the password, the PIN field. Yeah. This is the file that you want to sign. So it can be a DNN field, the portal relative path, it can be an absolute path, it can contain tokens. I just put in an actual path to this,
Sure, but it could be dynamic.
Yeah, it can be dynamic. So, we can also change this if you want to add support more use cases later on. Yeah, and this is the signed PDF file name. So what you want to the final file to be named. Yeah, this is why we've seen hello from Robert in here. Yeah, so the file, it's in here. It just appends some generated numbers in there, just so that if you have if you need to give it the same name, it will not overwrite the existing one and so forth. And you need to select the upload field. The one that I mentioned is hidden in our case, so that we are able to actually upload the file. Yeah, and this is mainly just some JavaScript that we have put in here to say if it was a problem during the signing operation, whatever. Again, this can be customized, whatever the users want to, they can put in here. Yeah. So this is kind of like the minimal what you need to do. So you need to add this auto signer signature dropdown. You need to have a password to field. We recommend that it's type of password. You can have it like plain text, but obviously not the best idea. Yeah. To enter the PIN, you need, ideally it's hidden, but again, you can have it visible if you want to. You need to have a single file upload, and you need to have this action on this button. The rest of it is mainly for us when you build this, when Robert helped build this use case, yeah, it's just so that it looks a little bit better. It does some additional things behind the scenes. In our case, for example, something that I haven't actually shown and you can do in here is in this form, it's actually the same form, yeah. And what it first does, actually, there is also an additional action that you can potentially use if you want to, which checks if the PDF auto signer is running, yeah. So what happens is essentially this form first checks that at on init, it checks that the auto signer is running, which is this application that I mentioned in here, the one that's running locally on the user's laptop as a scheduled task that starts at logon, yeah. And if it can communicate with it, it will display you the form. If it cannot, then you'll get an error. So let me show you something. So if I go and actually stop this, so I say, okay, end it. I want to end all of it. So now the application has actually stopped. If I go in Postman and I go send, you see it cannot connect to it anymore. The application is now stopped on the user's laptop, let's say, yeah. So now if I was to go first in here, like you see, you'll get this kind of thing, yeah. I'll actually need to close this one, yeah, just to make it more obvious, yeah. So it checks for local application, and then it says the auto signer is not running, please start it, yeah. So this is something that, again, there is an action that you can potentially use in your own init form to check if the PDF is running, but it's not mandatory. It depends on you how you want to build your application and what you think the appropriate workflow would be for you. As I mentioned before, just to go over it again, you need the auto signer signature dropdown, which will be the dropdown that you can use to actually create, to actually select a signature. You need the password, yeah, the PIN. You would need a file upload that we can use to upload the file, and you would need to use this action, which is sign PDF. And that's kind of like the minimal approach.
Yep. So just to kind of level set here a little bit, this is something that we did custom for a client. We're not going to see these actions immediately. These are not part of our core product that we're releasing, but we develop custom actions, and a full developer could develop these same kinds of custom actions if they were trying to interact, say, with an HSM type device. And so you've outlined, because we've got a local program where we've developed a custom action that makes sure that the program is running. Otherwise, they're not going to get anywhere. We have a custom control that's getting the signatures that are available, which makes it very, very easy for a low-code developer to implement this kind of thing. If you put in custom actions, all the work has kind of been encapsulated.
Exactly. Yeah. So just to add a little bit on it, as far as I'm aware of, the plan is to create this as an add-on. Yeah, it will probably come out at some point. Yeah, we still, as I mentioned, we're still kind of like in the early stages. We just developed this. We'll need to more thoroughly test it. As I mentioned, there are a lot of manufacturers for tokens, and we might need to do some adjustments here and there.
Yep. So just talking about the way that you chose to deliver this, talking with this local .NET Core application, it's an interesting design because you've got this kind of functionality that was it really needed to run on the local instance because that's where the USB is and needed to interact with in a very specific way with the USB. So we've got this local application that's talking to a browser. And the browser is activating the application and interacting with it, passing information to it in the form of a PDF and a signature, getting a PDF back from it, and then it goes back to its normal work of uploading and doing it on the web server. Essentially, we've offloaded this signing capability to the local laptop, right?
Yeah, because you need access to the USB. And as I mentioned, there are some potential different approaches. It's just that they're experimental, some of them, there are some security questions, there are compatibility issues. So I think this approach gives us the most flexibility and the best potential for the clients to, actually have the most options at their disposal to essentially sign this.
So just kind of putting this in a bigger sense for our customers that want to do full code, this opens up another, it illustrates a pattern that could be used. If a client had a very proprietary system that runs on a local laptop, that it wasn't worth, say, trying to put it all into a PlantAnApp website kind of an application, it could still run on a local server and do work, and you could interact with it in this using this technique where the browser taps the local application on the shoulder, says, do this work for me, whatever it is. In this case, it's signing, but in another case, it could be doing some kind of massive computation that the result needs to go to the PlantAnApp. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, something that already exists. We just need to create the way for the browser to talk to and offload this piece of work to the local system and then get an answer back, potentially. So it's an interesting pattern in that way. It's not just about digitally signing documents, it's about particular use cases where work could happen on a different server and there's just a communication with it. Yep. Good.
Okay, I'll stop sharing then my screen. Yeah, thanks, Ed.
Sure. With and as we kind of wind down on that topic, if there are any questions about it, would be just remind you that you can get into the question and answer or into the chat, and Razvan or I or Robert will be happy to take on all questions. But just kind of exploring that a little bit. Again, that kind of big pattern. It's really an interesting solution that the browser can talk to a local application as things are as it needs to, passing on the information that needs to. It could be anything. It could be if there was an intensive need for logging and auditing, you could be talking to that application ongoing as each screen was accessed. Again, I was talking about some kind of proprietary system that could just be opened up to have a case where communication was happening back and forth and then uploading. I've worked with a real estate company a long time ago. They were doing commercial real estate, and essentially they did the same thing. They offloaded. They had a very complex computation for how to value a property. It took 100 inputs, and it was very, very proprietary. It wasn't worth developing on the primary system, but you provide the thing 100 inputs, and then you get an output back, and that's what gets stored in the web application, not necessarily all the ways that it accomplished that work. So it opens up that pattern. We'll look forward.
Go ahead. Well, I was gonna say if a user didn't have access to the system they normally use, and but they did have access to a system, is this application something that would be easy enough for them to install, or is it so that they could then do a digital signature on another system, or?
What do you mean by that? More specifically.
So the local application that has to run on the system that the website interacts with. If somebody had another system, they lost access to the system where that's installed, and they had another system, is it something that would be easy enough for them to install on the? Yeah,
I mean, there is an MSI installer. You need to run it on your laptop, for example. Yeah, it's just that you need access to the USB token. Yeah. Obviously, otherwise you won't be able to, to sign the document.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They had the USB, but
so you have the USB, but for example, you've lost access to your primary laptop and you got on like another laptop or whatever. You can go and install the application, and as I've said, it installs it, and then it's fine. You can just sign with it. So it's not you can just download it and install it. You do need to be aware of a couple of things. Like, for example, at the moment, you need to have like administrator rights. to be able to install that application. There are certain, you know, restrictions you need to be able to, if you want to communicate to the PlantAnApp application, obviously you'll need to be able to access where the PlantAnApp application is installed and so forth. Yeah. So there are some things like that. Regarding what Dale mentioned, yeah, indeed, you can potentially use the same approach and, you know, create another application that does something else and runs locally on someone's laptop or on a server or whatever, and you can communicate with it like this. It is an approach. It is maybe not that common because mainly the issue is obviously what happens now, you don't have any control on the user's laptop. Yeah. So, you know, if they have any kind of connectivity issues, admin rights issues or whatever, and their applications, the local application stops working for whatever reason, it's going to be a bit more difficult for you to help out the user. Yeah. Whereas if it's a web app, you know, it's on your server, like what's the regular use case with the regular web applications, it's easy for you to kind of like debug the web application and figure out what's going on. Yeah.
So it's for a very specific case, very specific needs, but it opens the possibility.
We've built it for this specific needs because you need to get access to the local USB. Yeah, but it is possible to use this, of course, with other types of applications, to use the same approach if you want. Very
good. Razvan, thanks for presenting that.
Thank you.
I think it was very interesting. Just want to encourage everyone, we will be here again next Wednesday, rather with another low-code topic, plus our release of PlantAnApp version 121. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next week.